Today is Wednesday, April 23rd. Thank you for turning my microphone on. It's a meeting of the Placer County Board of the South Placer Regional Transportation Agency held here at the Placer County Board of Supervisors Chambers. We would like to start it off with the flag salute by Bruce Hadishow.
Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, so we're going to move on to roll call, please.
Broadway.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Howdeshelt.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Full house.
Okay, good. Okay, I'll now ask the clerk to read the meeting procedures.
All right, good morning. Again, okay, agendas are available outside the board chambers on the back table or on the PCTPA website. All comments from the public should be directed to the board. All speakers must speak from the podium as the meeting is being recorded. For those who are joining us by Zoom webinar, you can signal you wish to speak by clicking the raise hand button on the Zoom window. If you are joining by phone, press star 9 and staff will call out individuals who have indicated they wish to speak. If you would like to comment on an item that is not listed on the agenda, please do so under public comment listed as item F on the agenda. In addition, the Brown Act requires the public have an opportunity to comment on all items on the agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. The time will be monitored, and once the yellow light appears at the podium, or for those, you have 1 minute to speak, or for those online participants, when you hear a beep, the speaker will have 1 minute to conclude their comments. Lastly, the board asks that you consider stating your name for the record this morning. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you for reading that for me. Moving on to item C, agenda review.
No changes to the agenda, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move on to item D, AB 2449.
No action required relative to AB 2449.
Very good. Okay, scooting right along here. We're going to move to item E, approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review? And
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. I'll second it.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call? Or no?
No roll call.
No roll call. Okay, good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the public comment, item F. Persons may address the board on items not on this agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. Would you guys like to say something just to keep us entertained? Okay, thank you. And we're going to move on to item H. 10 a.m. public hearing, South Placer Regional Transportation and Air Quality Mitigation Fee Program fee.
Consent calendar.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped right over the consent. Never mind, didn't need your consent. Item G, thank you. These items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested citizen may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Board members, anyone like to remove anything?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to our public hearing. South Placer Regional Transportation and Air Quality Mitigation Fee Program fee adjustment. And we're going to have Rick. Let's get to present that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So the requested actions are shown here. It's to conduct a public hearing to consider fee adjustments to the SPRTA fee. There are 3 changes that are proposed in the resolution. One is added costs for Sierra College Segment 5. Second one is 0.105% inflationary adjustment. And the third item is a change to the private school K through 12 fee rate and units, changing that from 4.06 DUEs per 1,000 square feet to 0.124 DUEs per student. Assuming adoption, these would become effective on July 1st. And I'll kind of go through each of these in a little more detail. I would note this is, we do this every year. This is an annual process. Normally it's just the inflationary increase, but we have those other 2 items, come up this year. So regarding Sierra College Bridge Segment 5, back in August of '24, I brought an item to the board to change the scope and cost for Segment 5. That segment did not include widening of the bridge that is there kind of south of I-80. In addition, as we went through that, recognized that there was frontage that was originally included in the scope of the project that's being built by development, so that was removed. Some other little bits of frontage were kind of added in through there. What we went through this in August, the fee increase was rather small. It was between $0 and $39 per DUE, depending on the district. And so the staff recommendation and board approval was to defer that until the annual increase, just to avoid kind of the administrative costs of doing all that. So those costs are included now. And I do have a table kind of showing all this kind of near the end. It's also part of the board memo. Regarding the annual inflation adjustment, per the JPA agreement, this is done every year with the target of the July 1st effective date. The inflation adjustment is based on the engineering news records construction cost indices. It is the average of the indice values for 20 cities, which is kind of a national indices, and then the San Francisco area. So the table here shows the data for that. The average of the indices, as I mentioned, is 0.105%. It's very, very small. So it's kind of a nice change from what we've been seeing in the last few years. Regarding the private school adjustment, so the fees vary based on land use. For example, like an office generates a lot more trips than manufacturing. So we have there's a fee table lists all of the land uses. One of those land uses is private school. And when we did the 2024 Nexus update, this data comes from the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. And the old fees are based on the 9th edition. We did an update. We went to the latest manual, which was the 11th edition. And in going through this, we recognized what we have traditionally done is base schools based on fees based on 1,000 square foot of school building area. And the 11th edition dropped that. It no longer has that. It has just rates based on either students or employees. And working with the TAC, one of the TAC members said, if we go to students, it's more complicated than trying to fee someone based on building area, because we get a set of plans, we know exactly what the building area is, makes it very easy. They said, can you go back? And we looked at the 10th edition. 10th edition still had that. So we used the rates for the 10th edition for just that one thing in the whole fee table. Well, during the past year, Roseville had a school that came in and they went to implement the fee, and they recognized a couple things. One, that the fee amount had changed quite a bit between the 9th and the 10th edition. And, why did it change so much? Let's take a look at this. We went back and looked, and with the 10th edition, unfortunately, that fee is based on a survey of one school. And we don't really consider basing the fee on a survey of one school. It's kind of statistically significant. And the fee had gone up about 3 times what it had been in the 9th edition. And so it was a large change. So we got together with the TAC, kind of discussed this, what do we want to do? We went and looked at the other options, and everybody agreed the best thing was just to go to the per student fee rate. And the fee rate for private schools is very similar to the fee rate that you see for public schools. Public schools, they have 40 or 50 survey points. Private schools are less, but they're, like I said, it's very similar to that. So everybody felt confident in doing that. So that's the recommended change for the private school rate. So this table, highlighted there, shows the fee increase for the bridge. Again, it's between $0 and $39. Those changes, the difference there is really based on the percent share of traffic growth that is seen on segment 5 of Sierra College Boulevard. That's why they vary so much. The next table, the next section highlighted over on the right is the increase from inflation, again, between 0 and 4, actually $0 and $5. Very minor. Table over, or the box over in the far right is the total change, right? So those fees are increasing between $0 and $44, depending on the unit. Basically, this is depending on the district, 0.1% or 1.3%. So this is a very minor change. This is all, based on the Tier 1 fees. I should have mentioned that earlier. This table shows the Tier 2 fee increase. For Tier 2, this is information only for the board. The Tier 2s are implemented through development agreements by each of the member agencies, and so we don't actually take action on this. This is just for information. They handle that all at the local level, but I want to provide that for information. And this is solely the inflation increase here, but it also has that same school change. So the Tier 2s are not part of the resolution. So requested action, conduct a public hearing to consider the fee adjustments for the South Placer Regional Transportation and Air Quality Mitigation Fee Program, and approve Resolution 2502, adopting the fee adjustment for the South Placer Regional Transportation Air Quality Mitigation Fee. I will note, sort of reminder, it's a public hearing, so we've got to open the public hearing and take comment. We did send this information to the BIA. They received a copy. They responded that they had no questions or comments on it. I will note last that according to the JPA agreement, this does require a unanimous vote of all 4 members to go into effect. I'm happy to answer any questions either before or after the hearing.
Okay, board members, questions?
No questions.
Questions?
Okay, anyone? Seeing none? Okay, I bring it back to the board for action. We have to adopt resolution 25-02. No, because, yeah, we have,
No public.
yeah.
All right, I move approval of the item.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item I, Regional Transportation and Air Quality Mitigation Fee Allocation, request for the SR 65 Express Lane project. Rick again.
So recommended action, we're looking to allocate $500,000 in Tier 1 SPRTA fees for the State Route 65 Express Lane project for programming work. In terms of background, I think we're all aware that the regional plans assume the widening of 65 to accommodate current and future projects. We have a variety of projects that sort of contemplate that already. We have environmental clearance for auxiliary lanes between the interchanges on 65, and there are approved environmental documents for some median expansion for GOP, or for general purpose, and HOV lanes in the vicinity of the interchange. But the reality is SPRTA can only partially fund all these improvements. The Mitigation Fee Act, on which the SPRTA fees are based, does not allow us to collect fees for existing deficiencies, and I think we're all aware that there are substantial deficiencies there. So securing the funds to do all this work has been and remains a challenge, and Matt has spoken previously about doing a little bit of a pivot, and the reality is toll lanes offer a reliable revenue source to construct improvements on the corridor. So we're looking to start that process off. The toll lanes would give us opportunity to fund the project. It would also provide us ability to borrow funds to accelerate construction. Kind of the first part of doing all that is a project initiation document, or a PID. So that's what we're seeking to do today. In terms of the concept of this project, what we're assuming at this point is northbound and southbound toll lanes in the median of 65 between I-80 and Lincoln Boulevard. The first phase I've got sort of shown in blue there. That would be south of Sunset to south of Galleria. We assume this is delineator separated. If you're not familiar with what those are, this little picture here, delineators, that keeps folks from just cutting in and out. We know that if you don't provide some level of separation, we get about a 40% toll violation rate, and so it dramatically impacts the revenue. We also assume it would be sort of limited access. In this diagram, there's 3 green dots. At this point, that's our assumed entrance and exit points on the corridor. When we really get into this, that may change. We sort of do recognize up at the north, we show that just south of Lincoln. It may be more advisable and prudent to drop that south of 12 Bridges, but that's part of what that project initiation document work would do. In terms of tolling, I think it's just worth noting excess toll revenue must stay in the corridor. That toll revenue would allow future phases to be constructed, to be a revenue source for that. It would also, because it stays on the corridor, it would allow funding for those auxiliary lanes, general purpose lanes, things of that nature. In terms of a project initiation document, what really is that document? It defines the scope, the cost estimate, and the schedule for the environmental clearance and design work for the ultimate project. That's the kind of basic purpose of the PID. We have been coordinating with Caltrans staff early in this process, makes things go smoother, make sure we're covering the scope. In terms of the PID, I'm not going to sort of read each of these, but this is kind of the high-level analysis that goes into the PID, so there's quite a bit of work that goes in there. I would note the very last item on that kind of bottom right is the VMT mitigation. For us, I think that's the big sticking point. What are we going to end up having to do for VMT mitigation? What's that going to cost? It's kind of an important aspect of the project. From a financial standpoint, in terms of funding the $500,000, SPRTA fee includes a total contribution of just over $80 million toward widening of SR 65. $70 million of that remains unallocated. We have about $10 million currently allocated to the southbound phase 1 project. Only about $2.5 million of that has actually been spent, and the rest of it's sort of earmarked for construction. But there's ample allocation authority for that project, and in terms of just cash flow, we've got sufficient cash to be able to fund the $500,000 allocation. Recommended action is shown here, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, board members.
Chair Jones, yes, on the, I don't know what it's called, the Causeway project that's going on, are there delineators on those in that area, do you know?
No, there is not.
No delineators?
No, there's no delineators, and by design, because of the width of the causeway and Caltrans assessment that they could not, in their mind, safely put delineators on the causeway to have enough spacing. Because usually you have the delineator and then you'll have a minimum of about a 2-foot buffer, sometimes up to 4 feet, and Caltrans did not think they could fit it. Okay. Just as an aside, I do think after opening at some point they will go back and retrofit.
Okay. And my recollection is in Denver, when SACOG went on the study mission last year, there aren't any delineators on their high occupancy vehicle lanes either, so.
Yeah, I would tell you that there's almost 70 high occupancy toll or express lanes in the U.S. The vast majority of them are physically separated. If you look at the express lanes down in Southern California, they are physically separated. All of them in Texas and Georgia and Florida are. Virginia is. Denver, they are testing a technology system to keep people from lane diving in and out. However, just as an aside, what that means is they have to have a lot more images go to their back office that I would say are non-revenue. They are not part of the collection of a toll, which means you have imagine all of this, electronic volume going to your back office. It's non-revenue, so it could be expensive. But that is something they're piloting in Denver. I would highly recommend physical separation.
I mean, those delineators are more substantial than they look, right?
They are, and the
I
fact
mean, somebody's gonna just say, okay, I'm getting in that lane and
they will.
taking out delineators, right?
Yeah. Point of personal, my first express lane project was the 95 Phase 1A in Miami, and that was 2004. That was the fourth project to open in the U.S., and we physically separated it, and we budgeted to replace every delineator once a year for being knocked down. But if you still look at the ongoing operational cost of that relative to the gross revenue you receive, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Since then, we borrowed delineators from other applications and put them in. They now have design standards for these, so they're much more robust. And if you put them closer together and you spend that little capital money at speed, they look more robust.
Formidable.
And people violate them less. So if you look at the private ones in Virginia, they're every 8 feet. Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Broadway?
No question.
No? No questions? My only question is, how are we going to identify the autos that are authorized to be there? Is there going to be some way of knowing?
Yeah, the way we will do it is, and again, this can get ferreted out in sort of the early planning, and it speaks to sort of where we've been going with CARTA as sort of a member agency, even though we're not part of their tri-party JPA, is that it would be through a toll transponder. I would tell you just off record, if I were the king, I would say you have to get a transponder to use the lanes legally. And if we see you in the lane without a transponder, we will treat you as a violator and send you a bill. And if you do it again, you'll get a violation notice that will put points on your license. So, just like other things, right? I mean, asking, I think, any operator to have to snap a picture, go find the person, hope the DMV, all of your DMV
Right.
addresses, I'm sure are right? And then really what we see nationally is about, when you send a bill to somebody,
Yeah.
about half pay the first one, okay, but you had to mail it and that costs money. About half of the remainder pay the second, and about half of them never pay at all. So about 25% go to collection. So you want to use a transponder, just like
Right.
they have in the Bay Area.
Well, will there be something that the people who are on the highway can identify that, that somebody belongs in that lane, for those people who think, well, there's no indicator that shows, like the back bumper or anything like that?
Right.
A tag or something?
Right, there'll be no decal because ideally, and again, this will get worked out as part of the planning process, but we would represent that this would be a lane where everyone would pay. So just for clarity, there would be no HOV discount. This is not an HOV lane right now.
Right.
There would be no discount for electric vehicles. They don't get special treatment. So this lane would operate where everybody pays unless you're in a public bus. So Roseville Transit, Placer County Transit, those buses could go right down this corridor. That's a great benefit of this. This acts like a BRT express corridor. Mm-hmm. And outside of those public transit buses, if you're in a private automobile, you will pay the toll. We will then take that money and we will reinvest it in the corridor and in, enhanced transit over time.
Okay, so you won't pay a fee, say, for a month to use the lane. You're just billed you're
Yep.
charged or whatever on your fast track.
You'll go
every
out-
time you use it.
Yeah, you'll go, if you don't have a fast track account, you'll go sign up. And you'll say, here's my credit card number. Please put $25 on my transponder. And when my transponder gets to $10, please hit me for another $25. And 95% of the world, and especially this corridor that's a commute corridor of, this is what it is. It's not YOLO 80. This is home-based work. This is not also people, this is going to be very local traffic. They'll get used to it. And what will happen is you'll sign up for an account, and then, yes, you will go through a toll plaza. You will be charged the toll, and it will come out of your fast track account. And then it will come back to us.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, anyone in the public, any public comment? Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, just on the entry and exit points,
Yeah.
is that I'm looking at the different on-ramp and off-ramps along there. Is there analysis done relative to the percentage of traffic that does enter and exit that roadway from those points? Because I noticed there were only 3
Yeah.
points identified, but you have Blue Oaks, you have Pleasant Grove,
Yep.
you have
Right.
Sunset. Those are all
Yep.
major entry and exit points,
Yep.
but they're really not identified along there.
That's correct.
So will there be consideration given based on the volume, or is it just expected, given traffic movements, that you're going to generally stay longer in that lane and you don't need that much?
Yep, it's a great question. First question is, yes, there'll be traffic analysis as part of the planning work that'll be done. I would say prior to that analysis, ideally, inside of State Road 65, you have multiple sort of markets of traffic, and you have that localized stuff. In between, I'm gonna get on Pleasant Oaks, go to Blue Oaks and get off because I don't wanna go up, one of the arterial roads. This product is really not meant for that. This is meant for a longer distance trip, because you have to give somebody a value proposition of saving 5 to 8 to 10 minutes for them to decide, I'm gonna pay this extra money. So you don't really want an express lane that just has an entry and exit every mile, because you'd really want that traffic to stay in the general purpose lane or on the auxiliary lane if they're gonna get on and get off. Truly, you want this product to meet the more longer distance regional traffic. So as we envision it, with that first southbound segment, they would get in, and yes, it would be a pipe, 280, right? They wouldn't get in for 1 mile and then cut across 2 lanes in an auxiliary lane to try to weave to get off at Pleasant Grove, right? Because it's gonna create a lot of weaving. In the end, it wouldn't probably be a net benefit for the corridor. But, over time that could change. So we would see this as more limited, I'll use Lincoln, I live up in Lincoln, I'm going to downtown Sacramento, there's this huge queue at the southern end, I wanna get in, pay a toll, bypass all that, and I'm destined to 80. And as we would build out more segments, there could be, intermediate access. But ideally, no. Ideally, it would be sort of a pipe to get that regional traffic through that, for a fee. And then we would take that money and build out the auxiliary lanes that no one pays for between the local interchanges, so it can function better for the more local traffic.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, and again, I don't.
No, it's
probably
okay. This
getting
is a
too
very
deep in-
typical, this is a good question.
in the weeds, but I'm thinking about my friends to the west, where beyond Fitterman, there's a tremendous amount of development occurring. They're gonna come down Blue Oaks. But if
Yep.
Blue Oaks isn't an access point,
That's right.
you've just created all this compression, so essentially, there's not a lot of relief that's given for that
Correct.
backup that we already have. So that's just kind of,
No,
I'm
it's-
envisioning the challenge.
It's a great question, and it's a perfect question, and it's the sort of question we'll get when we talk to the public. And I would say to you, to ask someone to get on at Blue Oaks, to then move over 3 lanes, get on, move 1.5 miles, and then get off, it's not efficient. So yes, this product wouldn't help that movement. What will help this movement is the traffic all the way north of it, coming down from the New Village 5 and the Placer 1. They'll have an opportunity, if they want to get in, and so they won't be in those lanes. So some capacity will be created for that new, more localized traffic getting on at Blue Oaks. But you do get into these trade-offs of, well, if I get on at this point, I really can't take advantage of this movement, and that's true.
I just want to make sure that the Village 5 people pay more.
They will. Yeah, that was beyond me.
Thank you
But
for that, though.
no, it's a great, it's always, with these projects, that is always a question, right?
Yeah.
Of who gets access and who doesn't.
Because I think about this from the perspective of how we get our vehicles in and out of our UPS facilities.
Yeah.
And how because at 8:30 in the morning, you have 208 vehicles that are trying to get out onto Sierra College. And so how that movement occurs, and if you limit how
Yep.
they can exit and enter
Yep.
the roadways, it's
And remember, we already have in the pipeline, improving the aux lane and the GP lane in the build grant that's sitting on Secretary Duffy's right between Blue Oaks and to the south. So we already have that pre any of this work that will be non-tolled in the hopper. And let's say, for instance, we don't get that build grant, or something happens at the federal level and they decide not to give out earmarks anymore. Well, how are we going to fund that? Well, we could take this revenue and that's the big thing, we could take this tolled revenue and build out the other sections of the corridor, because this is the only pipe we've got to Placer 1 and to Village 5, and no one's building any more. So it's either all that traffic's either gonna come through your city, or we're gonna figure out a better way to accommodate inside that spine road. And so having different segments of almost a corridor inside of a corridor, I feel is a very, very solid way to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Will this lane be available for commercial vehicles?
No,
No, it will just be
correct.
passenger vehicles.
Passenger vehicles, no trucks or trailers.
Thank you.
Light trucks,
But transit vehicles, so if you
Yep.
Right,
Buses.
but not, not the heavy, not the concrete
No.
truck, not the
and to be honest,
utility guy.
when you talk to those folks, their value of time is different. So with you, I can give you 5 minutes, you'll get in to the cement truck. If I don't give him a half an hour, there's not enough value for him to get in.
Yeah, no,
And he's
thank-
slow and heavy, and we don't want him in there.
Just passenger
Yep.
vehicles.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we need to make a motion. Any comment for the public? No other comment, okay. We need to adopt Resolution 2502, allocating $500,000 of Regional Transportation and Air Quality Mitigation Fee Program, Tier 1 funds, to the SR5 Express Lanes project for the planning phase.
So moved.
Okay,
I will second.
I have a motion and a second. Okay.
We
Motion-
talked over one another.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, we're going to move on to the Executive Director's Report.
I have nothing in addition to add, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, well, anybody, board directions to the staff? Okay, it looks like informational items are there, and we're going to adjourn this meeting. Everybody have a great afternoon.
All right, Ben, I have to leave you with one more.